Hi, this is Uma Bokil, and I'm sitting here with Ishika Jain and Tanishk Singh, and we are all from a very interesting field of entertainment. So, before I go on any further, I would like both of them to introduce themselves. So, Tanishk.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Hi, guys. I'm Tanishk. I'm from Varanasi. I'm the editor's manager of Inkfeathers Publishing, and that's about it for now.
Hi guys, I'm Ishika Jain. I'm from Delhi and I'm a writer, podcaster and into career guidance field. So that's it.
All right. So, like we all know, entertainment comes and has been evolving in various forms. First, they came across literature, and then there were movies, and now there is something known as audiobooks and podcasts that a long time ago none of us wouldn't have even imagined. But now I think, and I feel safe when I speak for everybody when I say that podcasts are currently trending as a number one platform, even more than video interviews, I should say, where you actually get in touch with famous people and really inspirational personalities beyond the pages of their work or behind the scenes of their work. So, just like that, we are here to present something really exciting. Inkfeathers podcast is going to be there on your favorite listening app very soon. And today, Tanishk and I are here with the host of the Inkfeathers podcast, who is Ishika Jain. So, Ishika, I would like to ask you, when was the first time you ever listened to a podcast, and how was your reaction before you knew anything about podcasts and after you came to know that this is something what a podcast is called?
Okay, so in 2020 February, I went for a radio festival. That
Hmm.
time I was pursuing my masters. I completed my masters in 2020, and during that time I was in a community radio station.
Oh, okay.
So I went there on behalf of our station. So there I saw like there was a panel sitting and discussing over podcast, and there
Oh,
I got to know about what podcast is, and I got so fascinated by the idea because I like in radio, I got my passion for audio industry. So I
okay.
wanted to continue that journey, and after my masters, I knew like I want to go into this field. So that's where I got to know about what podcast is. I met few podcasters there and asked them like how we can start a podcast. So like eventually before listening to podcast, creating a podcast came before that.
All
So
right.
I like chose to create podcast first, and then eventually I started listening to podcasts because obviously, once you don't listen, you don't get the idea how this industry works.
Absolutely.
Similarly, if you want to write, so it's necessary like you read books because then you won't learn. So in
Absolutely.
similarly in podcasts, then I started listening to more podcasts and I started searching according to my interest. So that's how this started.
That's amazing. And how long have you been making your own podcasts?
I started my podcast in June 2020. Then,
Okay, so it's kind of recent. That's
yeah,
amazing. So,
it's been 1 year now,
oh yeah,
almost 1 year.
then I think we can all expect really fresh content from you from time to time.
Yes, definitely.
Well, this was kind of nostalgic for me because I personally came across the concept of a podcast not long after Spotify started putting it on their app. And at first, I was really confused as to what a podcast is really about. How is it different from an audiobook, etc. And then, as the puzzle pieces fell into place, I personally am a murder mystery fan. So I started listening to a very random true crime podcast on Spotify itself, and that's how I came to know that this is how podcasts are run. So it is actually a very exciting concept. So, speaking about the Ink Feathers podcast, which you're going to host, so according to you, what is it going to be? I'm really excited to know. So can you give us a little idea of what we can all expect from the podcast?
There's different kinds of podcasts, as you said, and during lockdown itself, I got to listen to more podcasts, and
Hmm.
they're different, like entertaining podcasts, informative, knowledgeable, and you gain so much knowledge from just listening to podcasts. What people are talking about, what are the current trends going on. So,
Hmm.
in Feathers is all about books, literature, creativity. So we can expect creativity, whole lot of creativity from In Feathers podcast. And it's not just that. Like in normal podcast, I've mostly listened to like people reciting poems or narrating stories, and that's it. But in Feathers, as we aim to connect people, and podcasting is all about networking and connecting, establishing bonds. And Ink Feathers is a place where, like, numerous people, whether they are reader, whether they are author, whether they are listener, podcaster, people working in Ink Feathers, they all come together at this one place. And that's the aim of this podcast, like bringing people together. That's,
That's a really,
yeah.
really beautiful concept. That's amazing. So, apart from me, Tanishq also has a few questions to ask you. So, I will let him take over.
Yeah. So first of all, it was actually refreshing hearing your perspectives on podcasts and what can people expect from Ink Feathers podcast, especially. So my question about from you is, basically, since you have been like recording podcast episodes for Ink Feathers like for a long time, I guess it has been 7 or 8 episodes till now. So what was your experience recording that? Like, how did you feel while going through the process? How did you do you face any roadblocks, stuff, anything?
Okay. So during my first 6, 7 episodes, I recited poems from Midnight Writer's book. It's an anthology of poems published by Ink Feathers. So it was a wonderful experience because while reciting poems, I could connect to those poems because if we are reciting, we need to feel what the writer is trying to say. So while reciting, I just delve into those emotions, if it's about love, if it's about struggle, if it's inspirational, anything. So they were different poems of different themes. And not just that, after that, I connected with those poets whom poems I recited. So that was like one of the best experiences of my life because while reciting poems, while understanding those poems, we anyone like who is a reader by like I'm also a reader, so we develop that connection with that particular piece. If we are reading a poem, if we are reading a story, so we often think like, what must be the writer thinking when he was writing this? What was his inspiration? And I got to know that personally by asking those writers. So in Ink Feathers, those episodes, I got to interact with those writers, and I got to ask them questions like, what was their inspiration behind that poem? What were their struggles while writing it? So like, not just reciting poem, but as I said, that Ink Feathers is bringing people together. So me being a podcaster, I got to connect with people like who wrote those poems, those writers. And being a listener, people would be able to listen to what they are saying, and being a reader, if they have read their poems, their stories, so they will understand more, they will be able to connect more to those writers and with me as well.
Wow. Okay, so you told us about midnight writers, and you told us about bring like people coming together and just talking about their stuff, their writings, and so basically, I can expect it was a kind of interview session as well as a recital for you,
Yes.
for the authors as well. So, can you tell us any one instance where you felt, okay, this is something very interesting, or this is something very funny, or something out of the box which has happened to me while like reciting, while recording, anything?
Like, there were writers from various backgrounds. So it's not like I interviewed writers just from India. There were people from US, from Australia. So there were different writers with different age group, with different educational background, lifestyle, and everything. And there was a writer who has experience of writing for 40 years. So when I was interviewing, so imagine, like, if I'm like just starting my writing journey, then if I'm interviewing someone who has 40 years of experience in writing, how much I gained and how much people could gain while listening to him. And then there was a writer, he's from abroad, and like, he is not he's physically disabled, but while writing, he's also photographer. So he shared his experience, his life experience, that how he became a photographer despite of his illness. So all those stories, like, I love to interact with people, and I love to listen to their stories. And being a podcaster, I think that's a requirement also. So like, while listening to their stories, it was a wonderful experience. Yeah.
Wow, that was enriching. That was superb. So basically, all these authors were from the book called Midnight Writers, and you told us about an author who has like 40 years of experience, and I can't get it out of my head like till now. That wow, 40 years is a lot of experience. So yeah, what is Midnight Writers all about? Like, I'm jumping straight off of the question, but like, it piqued my interest that Midnight Writers has such kinds of authors and such kinds of people who are interested in writing for this book. What was the general theme? What was the general idea of this book? Can you tell me?
Before that, I'll come to the anthology because most of the people don't know about what
Yes.
anthology is. So, anthology is a collection of, it can be stories, poems, or anything from different writers. So, we often see like book published by one author, by one publishing company. But in anthology, it's published by a publishing company. So, it's like, for example, Inkfeathers is working with so many anthologies. So, there are different entries invited by different authors on based on the same theme, and their stories or poems or anything on which that anthology is based on, they get published. So what happens is like, in one book, if it's a book of one author, then it's limited to that one author. But in anthology, it's like open to everyone, so it gives opportunity to everyone to showcase their talent. It especially gives opportunities to young authors, young writers who want to start their journey, because writing a novel is a big deal, and not we don't get that confidence instantly. We need to practice and everything. So if you are submitting your short story in an anthology and it gets published, so that gives you like a whole lot of motivation that you can write further. So that's an anthology where, and you have, suppose there are 20 stories in an anthology, so you have 20 minds, 20 different stories, 20 different inspirations. So Midnight Writers is all about that. There are different poems based on different themes, like as I said, love, friendship, and like so much more, inspirational, struggle. So there are different poems, and I selected few poems out of them. They were all very beautiful, but I had to select few for the podcast. And then I recited those poems. I interviewed those poets who wrote these poems. So that's the Midnight Writers. Like it has the collection of different poems on different themes. So it's like bunch of literature in that one book.
Okay, that's amazing. That's amazing. I had an idea. Like I was thinking that midnight writers would be something specific to people who are writing their poetries in like midnight or in the night time or something. I had that opinion, but it seems that okay, never judge a book by its cover. So yeah, okay. I think my queries are all satiated by now.
Your answers have actually gotten me even more excited for the podcast, to be very honest. In fact, you just told us about how inspirational it was for you when you interviewed all these authors, the specific author who has 40 years of an experience writing, and the others also, whether they were from India or abroad. So, despite the fact that you have had a podcast creating and hosting experience for over a year, was there any sort of nervousness or a nervous excitement before interviewing, and how did you feel as a person after having talked to these all of these brilliant people?
Okay. Yes, I was very nervous before talking to them, before hosting this podcast.
Hmm.
So, I did some voice exercises. Like, it's
Okay.
good for
Yeah.
a voiceover artist. So, yeah, and I just got into it. And while talking to them and after talking to them, it felt great. So, yeah, nervousness is normal and it happens.
Right, right. It's always, they always say that a little nervousness is always good because then you're alert and, all of those things. Well, it was
Yes.
amazing to have you with us, Ishika. And for all you viewers, the Ink Feathers podcast is going to come live very, very soon on your favorite listening app. So stay tuned and we will be back with you with another set of interviews. Bye bye.